Erik Ten Hag labelled that defeat against Crystal Palace as the worst defeat of the season. He said that he's absolutely the right man for the job. But what I want to do in this video is talk about what I consider at this point the breaking point. All right, the definition of breaking point is the moment of greatest strain at which someone or something gives way. And that's exactly the point that we are at now with Erik Ten Hag. When it comes to the sentiment among United fans, I personally always look towards what Andy Mitten has to say. And he was speaking about this on Sky Sports News earlier.
About that performance last night then, did it feel like the final straw for Ten Hag?
No, it didn't actually. Not in my opinion. It was horrendous. It was as bad as, maybe even worse than Palace when Erik Ten Hag first came in May 22 at the end of the Rangnick season.
So Andy right now doesn't feel like that's the final straw. And I'm not here suggesting that it is completely the final straw. But as Carl Anka wrote in The Athletic there, just how far can this Manchester United team fall? And what I want to do is run through two, in my opinion, two important points that is going to be the complete focus about what INEOS are going to do. All right? Give me 8 minutes of your time. Now, the Telegraph here reporting that Erik Ten Hag is going to be given the FA Cup final despite increasing doubt over his future. All right? Said that Man United have got no intention of sacking Erik Ten Hag before the final. Owen and Ten Hag claim that he should get sacked straight away, with Scholes agreeing. I'm going to run through that clip in a second there. And here you can start seeing, I mean, we've seen these sorts of things before, right? A number of players believe his fate is effectively sealed, that he's lacking motivational skills and empathy. I'm not listening to too much of this so far because we've done that rodeo. We've been down that path where we start, this is a manager who ran 13.1 kilometres with his players last season after they underperformed against Brentford. Doesn't really strike me as a man that doesn't have motivational skills. Of course, when the chips are down, players love to blame anybody apart from themselves. But when it comes to Scholes and Owen, this is what they said there about Steve McClaren.
Got to try something different.
Anything.
Steve McClaren?
Yeah.
We've played under Steve McClaren.
Yes.
He's coached us. There is no way, and we had a discussion before,
Steve McClaren. Steve McClaren. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Telegraph are reporting that Ten Hag is going to be here for the FA Cup final. And I think he will be. But it's not really the question. The question here about how far can they fall. The question about the FA Cup final. No, it's the question about next season. And that's where, in my opinion, this falls down into two particular points that I want to run through in terms of INEOS. INEOS aren't going to be basing this on emotion. They're not. They're going to be basing it on two things. Number one, how much do they trust Erik Ten Hag? Now, the first thing I would say about this point is that no successful business in the world is built solely on the back of trust. And if it is, your business is not going to survive. But do INEOS, do Wilcox, Brailsford, Ratcliffe, Blanc, do they trust that Erik Ten Hag will turn this around? Do they trust him? 13 defeats in all competitions this season. Manchester United, right there, as you can see, with the worst defensive record in 2024, according to the stats. Conceded the most XG per game, the most shots faced per game. Just a little bit more XG against from West Ham, but pretty much the bottom of the barrel. Do they trust that Erik Ten Hag's chaotic tactics this season are down to injury and personnel problems? Do they trust that this defensive setup here and the craziness that we saw against Palace was down mainly to injury problems? Do they trust that the fact that Man United have conceded 81 goals in all competitions this season, that Manchester United are in 8th in the Premier League? Do they trust Erik Ten Hag enough that all of these are mainly down to mitigating circumstances? Question number one. And question number two, do they have belief that Erik Ten Hag is their right man for their game model? Erik Ten Hag has the belief himself. But do they have the belief that if everything was cleared we had a cracking summer, we got rid of players, we brought new players in, do they have the belief that Erik Ten Hag will get this team to where we were against Newcastle, but even better because we've now got a better squad? That is another massive question. And truth be told, right, and then this is why I'm doing this video. Anybody who's been United People's TV subscribed for long enough will know the belief and the trust that I have had in Erik Ten Hag. Do I think he's a bad coach? No, I don't. I really genuinely don't. And that's somewhere where I absolutely do agree with Andy Mitten. What I'm seeing at Manchester United this season, though, is a steadfast approach to the proactive nature that he wanted to bring to Manchester United. And despite the fact that it hasn't worked because of injuries, because of a lot of mitigating circumstances, but also maybe down to his coaching and how the communication goes across, whatever it is, it's not worked. And we kept trotting down this path to the point here where we're asking, how much worse can it get? And that's where my personal trust and belief in Erik Ten Hag has really wavered. It feels like that game it wasn't the final nail in the coffin, but he's cutting off his own legs. Even if we get through the end of the season, we navigate these next 3 games and we somehow overcome City in the FA Cup final, how much damage has been done in the second half? Well, I suppose this whole season that needs to be repaired by Erik Ten Hag and the staff and new players that are coming in to return that belief, to get Manchester United back to where ultimately we want to be in winning trophies, and not the League Cup. I'm talking about the Premier League and the Champions League. I feel like I'm quite a reasonable fan. Sometimes I go overzealous on players. I get excited. Hands up. But I'm always willing to be patient with players and managers. And I'll never advocate for anybody to be sacked earlier than I think they should be. But Erik Ten Hag right now, I've lost some trust and I've lost some belief in him. Have you?